I'm Celene Hawkins. I work for the Nature Conservancy. We're a global nonprofit. Our mission is to conserve the lands and waters upon which all life depends. I have worked here in southwestern Colorado for most of my career, but I wanted to take a second to invite any of my colleagues who are here to stand up, since we have more staff working in the Southwest Basin than we used to. So Erin Derwingson's here, Mickey O'Hara, Lanier Nabaje. We have a lot of us here. The Nature Conservancy has owned land in the Southwest Basin for many years, as well as managing conservation easements. And more important for my body of work, we have done community-based work with Colorado water users for many years, and I know many of you here. So thank you all, and I hope that if you don't know my colleagues already, you'll take a chance to meet them today. So I wanted to kick us off today by reframing what we've heard earlier today, and to really think about Colorado being a headwater state. For those of you that live here, you know that one of the reasons that we all enjoy living here is that there are mountains, there are headwater rivers, there are forests that we live and recreate, farm, and manage. And this is really, I think, who a lot of us are as Coloradans who get to call this place home, and it's why many of you who are not from our state come and visit us here. And as someone who has lived in Colorado for part of my life, but have spent the vast majority of my life living in these sort of headwaters areas, there's a real responsibility that I feel to stewarding the lands and waters in the headwaters of the Colorado River Basin. Nearly 70% of the Colorado River's water originates here, and I think we have a real responsibility to steward what we have here. And I think everybody who's sitting in this room is playing a part of this. We care about our forests, we care deeply about the rivers and the water systems that we manage. And so when I think about sort of what we're doing statewide, regionally within Colorado, I always go back to this sense of care for the rivers that depend on us. We've also heard a lot today about how spectacular this winter has been. The snow has just kept coming and coming. And as a water manager, every time it starts snowing, I think, can I wash my truck again? Like, what can I do to make it just keep coming this year, given how much we've struggled with drought? But I also want to acknowledge that 1 year of really good snowpack is not going to pull us out of the crisis that we find ourselves in. And it's not just that the reservoirs in the Colorado River Basin are low, but we're really grappling with the effects of drought and aridification. And it's not just the numbers of how much storage we have in our reservoirs. We're feeling this all over the state and all over this region. So one thing that really struck me a few years ago, I was riding my mountain bike up Cascade, which is a really steep trail in the headwaters. And I had to stop because I was out of breath so often on this ride that I had time to really observe the forest around me. And a trail that I had ridden the whole time that I've lived here, it looked like the trees were shattering as they were falling down in the forest. You could really start to see the impacts of drought on these high elevation forests. But as you see in the slide, we're also seeing our rivers starting to run dry. And so this is not just the impacts on our consumptive users, but we start to get into impacts on our ecosystems, on the fish and wildlife that depend on our systems, and we are in real trouble. And again, it's great to have a really wet winter, but over time we're seeing more and more challenges in our communities and for everything that depends on the rivers that we love. So I don't like dwelling on problems very long. I really like solutions. And most of my career here in southwestern Colorado, I've really been looking for solutions that work for our communities. And I've learned a couple of things in this time that I wanted to talk about today. One is that there's no silver bullet for what we're dealing with in southwestern Colorado, in the Colorado River Basin. There's not one thing we can do to make our communities more resilient. There's not one thing that we can do to make our agricultural communities safer. We have got to try different tools, and we've got to try them in ways that work in our communities. And that's hard. You know, we can't just say, if we could just move this one knob, if we could just do this one thing, everything would get better. I believe that we're at a point that it's sort of an all hands on deck, try all the tools situation. It's not just going to be a water conservation program. It's not just going to be forest health initiatives. It's probably going to be a lot of us working in community, doing a lot of things together to try to meet the challenge that we're faced with. And I want to end my remarks here and let my colleagues talk by just saying that I've been involved in a lot of local watershed planning, stream management planning efforts all over southwestern Colorado. I've worked on reservoir operations. I've worked with tribal communities. And there's one thing that I've observed consistently through my work, and that is that communities and people who work in water care really, really deeply about what they're doing. And we share a lot of values. And I found that if we take the time to really understand each other's values and start working together, we can do some pretty incredible things. So I'm now going to pass this off to a couple of people who are going to help us understand what those things are and how we pay for them. And then I'll come back and moderate the questions. So thank you. And I think, Jake, you are going to be next.